the AWP, the Big Green, the AWP, undeniably one of Counter-Strike's most iconic and by far its strongest and most impactful weapon. A weapon so strong and so defining that the gravity of its impact has been warping the way we play Counter-Strike for decades. A weapon wielded by some of the greatest to ever play the game, responsible for some of the most iconic moments, and most of all, responsible for why we can never win on Mirage because no one knows how to smoke window. The AWP is this ubiquitous, everlasting force in the way we play Counter-Strike, up until now, where in CS2, for the first time maybe in Counter-Strike history, we've seen a significant decrease in the amount, the availability, and the impact of the AWP overall. And this has been felt at all levels of play, especially at the pro level. And now, we're starting to see teams experiment for the first time in a long time with making the AWP surplus to requirements. You see, for a long time, you could never think of building a top 10 or a top 5 team in the world without a primary, dedicated star AWPer. It just didn't happen. The idea of 5 rifle cores or teams that had hybrid AWPers instead of primary AWPers was considered a relic of an earlier time in CSGO's history, the era of teams like NIP and Virtus.pro. But it had been the case for many years after the fact that building a top team without a dedicated AWPer just simply didn't work. And then we come to CS2. And then we come to Cloud9. Since the start of CS2, this Cloud9 team has been a top 5 team in the world. They've done well in various tournaments and had a great run through the recent major cycle, both in the RMRs, through the opening stage, all culminating in a top 8 finish in a pretty competitive field. However, they've failed to capture any top prizes. They haven't won a big tournament during this time. They've done all this without having a primary AWPer on the roster. And this role issue has been the main criticism of this roster the entire time. Can it work without one of what is considered to be the most important roles in the game? And after watching Cloud9 so closely during this major cycle, I actually think there's a lot more to the potential of 5 rifle cores that is being given credit. So in today's video, I want to explore what this Cloud9 roster has done, the current state and impact of the AWP in the broader meta, and how a 5 rifle core could actually come to be a top team in CS2. So, if that sounds interesting, make sure you guys take a second, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm and helps me with my goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers. I'm really close. I'm almost 100 subscribers away from hitting that goal, and the support from you guys lately has been crazy. So thank you so much for that awesome support. No other plugs today, except maybe give me a follow on Twitch, linked in the description down below. Let's get right into the video. First things first, let's talk about this Cloud9 roster. This Cloud9 roster is essentially the major winning Na'Vi lineup, but we substituted Simple and Bit with Hobbit and Axile, who are the remaining Cloud9 players after they blew up the last lineup. On the surface, I actually really like this roster construction. The star power between Hobbit and Electronic is quite good. Boomich, I think, is a great in-game leader who got a bad turn of events towards the end of his tenure in Na'Vi, and Axile has been inconsistent but quite good, and Perfecto is a good player with brief bursts of very, very high output. I mean, when you get down to it, Hobbit has been a top 10 player at some points in his career, and he's definitely had that potential over time, and Electronic has been a top 5 or better player at his peak, and has been an easy top 5 rifler in CSGO throughout that prime. So let's take a look at the results and see how this team has done. Going back to 2023, they've competed in quite a few events, starting off with top 4s in both the Thunderpick World Championship and the Blast Premier Fall Final. They then went top 6 in both the Bet Boom Dacha and the Blast Premier World Final. They went second in the first stage of the PGL Major RMRs. Their worst 2 performances came at the Blast Premier Spring Groups and then IEM Katowice, where they went top 12 at Blast and top 16 at Katowice, especially after going top 8 in the play-in for Katowice. That was a pretty big disappointment. But they followed up Katowice with a strong showing throughout the major. They went top 2 in the RMRs, they then went out top 8 in Blast Premier Spring Showdown, they then went top 2 in the opening stage of the major, culminating in a top 8 finish in the playoffs of the main event at Copenhagen. All in all, a really solid run of results. No wins, obviously, but outside the Blast Spring Group stage and then IEM Katowice, they were always in the hunt in these tournaments, which is a really good sign. Now, I wouldn't consider the HLTV rankings for the top teams to be the best rankings that are out there, but at least gives us an idea of how most people are viewing Cloud9, and over the last 6 months, they've been a top 5 team in the world, and I would agree with that. I would actually have them at 4th on my personal ranking list. And they've done all of that without having a primary AWPer. So on the surface, they've been able to make this 5 rifle core work with some timely hybrid opping from players like Hobbit and Boomich. And that correlates nicely with what I think we've seen as a broader trend in CS2, and that's that the AWP is less available than ever, and that means that its impact is much more niche than in previous versions of the game. So again, kind of painting broad strokes here with the stats available on HLTV, if you look at the weapon statistics at the pro level for the lifetime of CSGO, the big green accounts for around 12% of all kills. When we swap to what we've seen so far in the lifetime of CS2 at the pro level, that drops by 3%. That is a very, very big shift when you consider that the games really aren't that much different. Mechanically, there are basically no differences between the AWP in CS2 and CSGO. There's been changes around it, but the way the gun works is essentially the same. So why has it dropped off so significantly? And shocker, it comes back to the combination of economy and MR12. MR12 means less full buy rounds overall, which means there's less opportunity to accrue enough money to get the AWP. You add on to it the fact that we're in an economic environment where it's harder to accrue money to begin with, and AWP usage goes even further down. So now, we've essentially created an environment that has eliminated the idea of the dedicated AWPer. For those less familiar, in previous versions of CSGO, and in previous eras, we used to see players who were dedicated AWP-only players. They would literally forego using rifles almost entirely. They would buy pistols, they would buy submachine guns, they would buy scouts, they would do whatever they could to buy around their teammates who are buying up rifles and full kits to try and generate money to get to the AWP as fast as possible. We essentially don't see that idea of the AWPer anymore. Right now, to be an AWPer at the pro level, you need to be a hybrid to some extent. You have to be good with your rifles because they're going to be buy rounds where you cannot afford to use the AWP. And if you can't use an AK or an M4 in that situation, then you are a detriment to the team. Now, to be fair, that trend of AWPers needing to be more versatile is not exclusive to CS2. It's something that I think really got pioneered by Simple as he rose to the godlike heights of perfection. Simple redefined what it meant to be an AWPer versus some of his contemporaries like Device, Kenny S, JW. And I think we're seeing the culmination of that when you look at the trend of who the top players are in CS2 right now. Again, going to HLTV, you saw by the last 3 months, you look at the top 20 players in CS2, you're going to see a lot of players who are the primary AWPers for their teams. Munisi, Zaiwu, Shiro, Brokey, Wonderful. The key thing is, when you look at those players though, and you look at their stats, they are using the rifles almost exclusively as much as they are using the AWP because they either can't afford to get the AWP as much, or because they need to have that flexibility. So then we come back to Cloud9. We come back to this roster who is surviving by filling their AWP role with timely hybriding by Hobbit and Boomich. And they're tending to do it well enough for right now. But how can you push this further? Can a true 5 rifle core with limited hybriding actually win big tournaments? And I think yes, with the right personnel. Now listen, I'm not just saying that the opportunity for Cloud9 to do something insane is right there, but it's basically right there. You know, Na'Vi just won a major, probably not going to want to mess with this lineup right away. Simple, looking to get back in the game. Played with Electronic, Boomich, and Perfecto. Won a major with them. Simple, saying he wants to AWP less, rifle more. Could be good as a perfect insert hybrid, that's all I'm saying. Cloud9, the ball is in your court. Now obviously, adding the Chosen One to any roster is a great way to make a great roster. It's basically playing rock, paper, scissors, but then you pull out the shotgun. So, what does this mean in the broader context of the game? Can 5 rifling see an upward trend as we move further into CS2? And I think yes, I think I want to see more rosters experiment with this. Bless you, dog. The problem is, it's certainly not going to be easy. If you run into teams with top AWPers, you then have to play much more difficult Counter-Strike to get around that. Because even though the AWPing is down, the impact is still just as deadly. So you're going to have better strats, better execution. You're going to have to rifle better than the other team to make up for that gap in impact. Which again, at times, this current Cloud9 roster has definitely done that. They've had great series wins over teams like Vitality, Na'Vi, but then would falter against teams like FaZe. It really came down to what you could expect out of the individual performances from players like Electronic and Hobbit. Specifically for this roster, this current construction of Cloud9, I wouldn't let Hobbit continue to hybrid. I don't think he's that good when he picks up the AWP, especially considering how much better he is when you just put him on the rifle and let him go free. Boomich, for someone who is an IGL who picks up the op pretty frequently, I actually think does quite a good job. He's really good on maps like Anubis, but I think he could expand his reach to other maps with a little more confidence and a little more training. He's someone who can definitely get the job done, and he's had great highlight moments along the way. And of course, again, you add in Simple, you start splitting up the opportunity between him and Boomich, all I'm saying, pretty good combo. Pretty good, Simple, the chosen one, the reunion, Boomich is back. Oh yeah, Cloud9, come on, spend that money, Cloud9. I know you got it. I know you got that money. Come on, he's right there, the chosen one. Imagine that, the chosen one sounds great, doesn't he? Put that on a jersey, merch. Just think about it. The god of Counter-Strike, Cloud9, together again. What you can get revenge for when Liquid had him all those years ago. You remember that? Remember when Liquid had Simple, Eco? They did the run at the major. Yeah, you guys could do that. You guys could do that. You could do that. It's possible. You just gotta do it, and hope Simple's okay with it. But listen, you should just sign Simple, please. Anyways, agenda posting aside, bring it back to the central question of this video. It's the title. Has the Cloud9 experiment failed? I think no. I think it's actually been a lot more successful than people are giving it credit for. Throughout the major, I would listen to the analysis segments, and every time Cloud9 came up, it was always about, well, they don't have an AWPer. The big hole in this lineup is they don't have an AWPer. They're not going to succeed without a primary AWPer. And despite that, they've had a great run of form to start off CS2. Top 8 at the major isn't a failure to me, especially when you consider the field they played in, the opponents they had to play to get here. When it comes down to it, they beat the teams that were below them convincingly, and then they struggled against the teams that are definitively better. Yes, it was kind of game to game with performances from players like Electronic and Hobbit, but that's always going to be the case with star talent. And when I look at what they could possibly change, the first thing that stands out to me is that who would you get as the primary op for this team? Who's available? You're not going to get Wonderful from Na'Vi, they just won the major, he's locked down. How many Russian oppers are coming up right now that aren't already secure in other teams? Shiro's secure in Spirit, you have Wonderful and Na'Vi. Like, you're going to have to start digging into the tier 2 to start finding a Russian opper or go international for other opping talent. But again, who is available? A lot of the other top oppers that you would want to sign because it's a top 5 team are locked down. So the answer is simple, really. You either don't do anything or you sign Simple. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the state of Cloud9, the state of opping in CS2 kind of generally, and the return of the possibility of 5 rifle as a playstyle. Let me know what you guys think of Cloud9 in the comments down below, as well as the state of the op in the broader game. At least personally, when I start playing my matches, I see the op way less than I did in CSGO, and oftentimes I can go games where it doesn't pop up at all. It's really interesting how things have shifted. Anyways, let's discuss that. Economy, the op, wow, amazing. Shout out to my channel members, Furley, Justin, and Jesse. Without you guys, this stuff wouldn't happen. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you soon with another video. Peace.